friend. So introduce yourself quick so people know who you are.
Yeah, I'm Steve Carra, state representative in Southwest Michigan. I live in Three Rivers. It's just south of Kalamazoo, right on the border with Indiana here.
So Steve, we're gonna get into it right quick. So like cryptocurrency and blockchains. Give me a general explanation, like of your view on it, because we've talked about it before, like informally, but we never actually. I never really asked you what was your opinion on it, besides people just using it to donate to campaigns and such.
Well, we're living in a world of fiat currency, and government and big banks want us to just go along with their corrupt process that just further benefits the large corporations that grow up around a central planning, big government type of process. And cryptocurrency provides us the opportunity as individuals to help to restore a free market as best we can and to reject the status quo of government and monetary policy.
Okay, so you said corrupt. There's a lot of people that actually, my cousin, I was talking to him the other day, and he actually told me that he hates cryptocurrency because when he thinks of cryptocurrency, he thinks of like, well, by the way, there's certain people that I mentioned that you may not be familiar with. I can explain to let me know. Like, you know that guy Russ Ulrich that created the Silk Road, I believe it's called.
Okay.
It was like created in 2010, 2011. It was basically a place where people use cryptocurrency, Bitcoin, because at that time they didn't have the technology, the feds to actually trace cryptocurrency transactions that they do now. Like if I send money to you and we both use private wallets, they can still through forensic accounting find out that I'm sending it to you. But back then they couldn't. So this guy Ross Ulrich created a system where people could actually use Bitcoin to buy weed, prostitution, etc. Just in general, just give me a quick what is your when you compare that, you say corruption from the government. What do you think of like societal corruption? Do you think that that's a problem too on both sides? People using it for illicit means right now, or you think that we're past that?
Well, I think when people are able to have transactions in the free market, it's none of the government's business. As long as there's no victim, as long as you're not going out and committing crimes or something. If you want to give somebody cryptocurrency in exchange for a product in the marketplace, great. Government doesn't need to know anything about that.
I agree with you actually. So state government of Rhode Island. I work with Rhode Island, the public-private partnership. I don't do grants. I know that you're not into that, so we don't do grants anymore. We utilize the private sector fully. I hope you're proud of me. But what do you think of like the state government's policies in Michigan? I know that you're not. That's not your. What you do specifically. You don't really advocate for it. But is it a very pro-crypto friendly state right now, Michigan, or is it more anti-crypto?
The state currently, for the last two-year term that we're almost wrapping up here, is in Democrat control of the House, Senate, and governor. This is my second term I'm in currently, and we haven't had any legislation come forward for a vote that's been bad on cryptocurrency. That's the good news. And largely for the rest of this term, that's all I want. It's just nothing bad to happen. And once we get out of Democrats having complete control, then hopefully Republicans, I think we're a little bit safer with Republicans, but we don't need establishment Republicans taking us in the wrong direction either. So I think that where we are in Michigan, what we've seen in the last few years is I haven't seen anything bad happening, but ideally, you need involvement that state government takes is just simple things like saying that you can't have an additional tax on people for using cryptocurrency, or you can't say that you can't have a personal wallet or a third party wallet that can't drive towards government getting involved further. That's what we want for government, is just to stay out of the way.
Okay, so you talk
That's
about taxes. Oh, go ahead. Sorry, finish up.
Oh, I was just saying that's what I want, is for government to stay out of the way.
Okay, so we have a situation right now where a lot of politicians are advocating for taxing even unrealized crypto gains. You know how crypto works. Like, let's say you buy, for example, Litecoin at $200 today and it goes up for $400 tomorrow and you cash it out in fiat, in US dollars. Some people say that it should be taxed. Some people are saying that you should not be taxed for transferring money from one form to another. Like, if I send $100 to Mexico to my cousin there in pesos, he doesn't get taxed for that. Like, do you think that we should be taxing people for switching between cryptocurrency and fiat?
No, I don't think there should be a tax between the two.
But what would you say to people that say it's an investment versus it's not really a cryptocurrency? When you buy Bitcoin or Litecoin, certain cryptocurrencies, with an expectation of earning a percentage, right? Like a stock almost or a security that you shouldn't just be able to transfer it over and keep the capital gains. Or do you look at it that way, or you think that's not correct? The correct way of viewing it.
Well, if you look at it as a currency, which cryptocurrency is a better currency than say the Federal Reserve notes of the government, which is it, the proper role of money is to store value and to say that when you went out in the marketplace and you did something, you got something in return. And we shouldn't be taxing that. So I would say the transaction between different, Federal Reserve notes and cryptocurrency, no, that should not be taxed. It's not labor; it's the store of value for the labor you did. Working as an employee or selling a product or providing a service. And so, no, the currency itself should not be taxed or the transaction between them.
So sticking with that, FDIC insurance. When you open an account, right? You open an account. I believe it's, correct me if I'm wrong. I believe that you're protected up to $250,000, right? In case that bank loses, the federal government will give you back $250,000. Do you think that
So,
FDIC? Sorry.
well, the more that FDIC gets involved in something, we don't want. I don't think we want them to get involved in currency either, because then it just comes with strings attached. The federal government looking into and ensuring, and then once it's ensuring, it's going to want to have those strings attached, that regulation on top of it. So, I think that the cryptocurrency market should just stay out of the FDIC insurance business.
Okay, so the federal government should stay out of the cryptocurrency market. So do you? Okay, so certain states like Texas, for example, and Rhode Island to a certain extent is working on this. They want to charter at the state level banks that can actually hold cryptocurrency deposits on behalf of clients. And there's people in the Republican Party saying they want to do the same thing with federal chartered government banks. You know, if the Republicans take over and you have all three branches of government in Republican hands, they can pass policies like this. Do you think that the federal government should just stay out and let the states handle it? Well, you're a Michigan state representative. Let's talk about Michigan specifically. You have to protect the residents of Michigan. You work for them. Do you believe that banks chartered by the state of Michigan to be able to actually hold cryptocurrency deposits like they do U.S. dollars, for example, like in a certain in accounts?
My initial thought on that question would be if it's like a third party private sector, you want somebody else to manage your process for you. I'm just very leery of this banking system that we have in the government where you got your big government and big business and big banks all intertwined, and to hand them over the keys to protecting our cryptocurrency to me is it seems like a scary process. I think that people should have their individual wallets and then run more of a grassroots type of operation and just using it as a store of value with your currency, your cryptocurrency, your digital assets, than getting the big banks and the federal government involved.
Okay, so in Michigan, you said that you guys are more Democrat controlled right now at the state level, and your governor's act obviously a Democrat too. Although I think she might be not as being from the East Coast. Hopefully, she's not as crazy as she is. I don't really know much about her, but I heard she was pretty bad during COVID. But anyway, do you believe that from what you've seen at the federal level and at the state level in Michigan, it's a bipartisan issue that should be tackled together, or do you really think that the Republicans, like a lot of people believe, are the ones that are really spearheading it, and the Democrats are anti cryptocurrency?
I think the idea of cryptocurrency is more.
Yeah.
But the corporate welfare machine is shifting over to the Democrat Party rapidly. It's actually has a home, especially in Michigan, more in the Democrat Party than it does the Republican Party. And I would say that you have Democrats and independent voters, as well as Republican voters, of course, who support cryptocurrency. And hopefully, we can get elected officials on both sides of the aisle who will be friendly towards crypto, but not government engaging in the process of cryptocurrency. I think we need to keep it very decentralized and keep the government out of the operations.
Okay, so I have a quick question that some people want to hear about. I think you did some research on these three people. I want to mention three names, and I want to get your opinion on their political views with regards to cryptocurrency and innovation in general. Elizabeth Warren, Gary Gensler, and Joseph Biden. What do you think of their little anti-crypto army that they're forming up for? And what do you think? Do you think that'll have an effect on the general layout of the 2024 presidential election?
We'll see how much they're talking about that. I'm not fully familiar with exactly what they have going on, but my speculation, knowing those three individuals for who they are, is that they would want the government to be overseeing more, to be regulating more, to take what would be an innovative entrepreneurial idea from the free market and get the government involved in regulating and engaging and overseeing and monitoring and getting data collected and harvested for the federal government as the process that they would probably be interested in. And I think that's the wrong route. That is a very dangerous route, actually. And so I say we need to resist the ideas and strategies that they might come up with, and just trust innovation, free markets, and the entrepreneurial spirit and investors to make the decisions for themselves without government oversight.
So yeah, it looks like you kind of, just generally speaking, segued into our my next question, next topic, which is CBDCs. Central bank digital currencies. So there are two states, I believe, maybe even three, that outlawed them. There's Florida and I believe South Dakota outlaw CBDCs. They're like, even if they do this at the federal level, we're not going to do this in our states. It's illegal, which I'm not even sure if you can do that. However, they did it, and I'm not sure what the state of Michigan's stance is on it. But do you think that eventually, because even Trump said if he wins, let's hope he does. Again, cheers. If he does win, that he's gonna ban CBDC at least for his tenure of the 4 years that he's gonna be in power. Do you think that we're eventually gonna have to go that route? Because right now they have CBDCs in China and other countries, and it's for them it's working very well. They're able to spy on citizens. They're able to track everything that citizens do. You go buy a piece of gum. I lived in China, as you know. You go buy a piece of gum with your phone, and they know that you bought a piece of gum, what time, and everything. You think that we're eventually going to go towards that route in the U.S. as well with CBDCs?
Well, that's one of the main fights that I think we need to resist, because once the central banks have control over the digital currency, once the government has more control, they can say, "Hey, you've got a Gaston flag hanging out outside. We're not going to take your money away from you for that, but until that flag comes in, your account's frozen." Or they can say, yeah, you want to purchase a firearm? Well, hold off on purchasing that firearm until you fill out all this paperwork and your entire account, not even for purchasing the firearm, but you want to buy a loaf of bread? Well, you can't buy a loaf of bread until you get us that information, because you tried to purchase a gun and now we ask this information from you and you need to provide all this information. And then until you do what we say, we're just going to suspend your account until you comply with the edicts of the government. A very dangerous process. I think we need to keep the government very far away from it, and I'm strongly opposed to it. Knowing where you purchase a pack of gum, that's none of the government's business. If you're going and you're
Yeah, I agree with
shooting
you.
up,
Sorry, go ahead.
yeah, the problem is when you commit crimes, right? So that's the non-aggression principle. You're free to do what you want as long as you're not infringing on somebody else's rights. And for the government to say everybody's guilty until proven innocent, and we're going to micromanage and control their life decisions and direct them and guide them towards a lifestyle that we support. That's the type of thing that we can expect if the government overtakes the cryptocurrency market.
So the next question is like really close to my heart. So you know that I did a TED talk a couple years ago, and I actually talked about specifically the country of Estonia, where they have the blockchain database nationally. It's a small country, right? Where they start everything from your birth records to your death records, everything in between, housing deeds, university degrees, etc. Even like the vaccines that you take, which I think is insane. That part is a little bit much, and the equivalent of what they have for social security numbers. So I believe that you can actually do that, but I think that it should be done in a way that protects citizens' data from the federal government, kind of like the concept of a private wallet where you hold it yourself and nobody can access it, right? Nobody knows how much currency you have. Nobody knows your data. They can't just access your data like on demand. But the state government of Rhode Island, which I'm working with, I'm trying to figure out a middle way that we could both be happy. They will, I think the way they see it is that they're going to hold all the records, and they've already begun pilot programs. They want to hold all the records on a blockchain that they have 100% access to. Say Rhode Island's really small, kind of like Estonia, geographically small and very dense, so they have the ability to do it. What do you think about the way that country of Estonia does it, where they hold everything in a public ledger? Is that a good thing or a bad thing, and why?
Well, so I'm not an expert on what Estonia is doing, but I'll answer this question as best I can. And just a caution, trying to find a middle ground concept. With Rhode Island, my recommendation for you, and I'm over speaking, knowing what you have and
No,
haven't
no, no,
done.
and I appreciate you. I appreciate everything everybody says and what you say too. So go ahead.
Yes, so I would say taking it away from talking about cryptocurrency and just how I operate as a legislator. Think about the word compromise and compromised. Compromise without the
Mm,
D means if we enact policy that may not be everything I want, but it's still a step in the right direction to where we're better than we are currently. Compromise is fine if it's a step towards the Constitution, if it's a step towards the proper role of government, if it's a step towards protecting freedom. To compromise is fine. We need to make sure that we're not compromised. We can't ever go in the wrong direction. And a fear that I would have with finding a middle ground with the government is once you find a middle ground, if it is something that's not terrible, but it's not great, the fear is if that's where you start, where's it going to go from there? Because once the government gets involved in
yeah,
something, it's only going to get worse. So, opening the door towards something that might be okay at its starting point, but eventually will get to somewhere bad is just something I want to just caution. Ensure that you're careful with. Um, but what Estonia is doing, I guess, what I would say in the United States is we should be decentralizing the federal government's involvement in current. The Federal Reserve is the core of corruption in our country. Large corporations and people will try to blame free markets and say that there's just greedy rich people who want all the wealth for themselves. Well, if you get rich off of fair and honest trade, more power to you. But if you have special access in the state capitol or in Washington, D.C., and you're getting special deals just because you know the right people to get you a special tax break or a special hundreds of millions of dollars handout. That's not free markets. That's crony capitalism. That's corruption. We need free markets, equal opportunity, less rules, regulations, taxes, fines, and fees. And if we can decentralize the government's involvement in the monetary policy and then leave it to the marketplace, if in the marketplace the people want to go towards cryptocurrency as a medium of exchange, then let the market run its course and get the government out of the way. Now that's my ideological idea, but that's that's of course a big undertaking to get to that point. But that's how it should be: is leave it to the free market.
definitely. And in that sense, there's two cases in the past 10 years that I really like of blockchain. One is in the private sector and one is in the public sector. So the private sector example is Walmart. Walmart, if there was a bad piece of meat, for example, it would take them months, at least weeks, to actually figure out where the meat came from. Now with blockchain technology, you give them a receipt, they scan it. Within seconds, they know the farm, the cow's serial number, and the owner's contact information, so they can contact them right away. That's crazy. Like blockchain can take a process that took months, and now to track and trace. That's what's called track and trace on the blockchain. They do it in seconds. And in the public sector, rather, in the state of California recently, on a blockchain called AVAX, I'll keep this very simple so people aren't confused. They basically took like car deeds or like the proof of like car receipts that you transfer from owner to owner and put it on the blockchain. So now instead of people having to go to the DMV and wait in line on their phone, they can transfer their car rights to somebody else using the blockchain statewide in California. So what do you think is the future for blockchain using these two examples? or future use cases that you think are good for the state of Michigan or the federal government that won't harm the private, the private sector or innovation or infringe on people's rights?
Yeah, so and data mining is one of the things that local departments I think are doing. They're too busy with trying to get information on everybody instead of actually providing services in the state of Michigan. And so the less the government's involved in that process of knowing every little detail about your business, and the more if people choose to freely want to use cryptocurrency as a way to keep track of their medical records, or if that's what you want to do and the government's not involved in it, I'm supportive of that process if that's what people want to do. But I'm very leery of it being a partnership with the government, and it's hard for me to imagine that California is not getting that information with whatever process they have over there, and using it to further spy on or know details about the individual. Use cryptocurrency to store the records if you want to freely, but get the government out of that process.
I have a question for you based on that. So again, we're both libertarians. I'm the kind of guy that I'm like, listen, we both live on a street in New Hampshire or Nevada, there's a pothole, let's fix it together. We don't need to pay the government overhead costs. I was talking to a lady in New York City like 2 years ago, and she was like, you know what? I went to New Hampshire. I don't like the way they live. I'd rather pay the government extra tax money so they can take care of everything. What would you say to somebody like that that comes to you, like, because let's say, sometimes one person ruins it for everybody, or the majority rule, right? Which are the people that from the country didn't want that majority rule imposing the will on the minority that wants freedom necessarily. So, what would you say to people that say, "Hey, listen, I don't care. Put everything on the blockchain." Again, it ruins it for people like me and you that don't want our information out there. What would you say to them, like the
Well,
liberal people?
well,
They call them that.
if your data is encrypted on the blockchain and you're the only one who can see it and you can't open it up unless it's you who has the access to your wallet, it's just kind of like how much money you have in your crypto. I think that that'd be fine. But if it is open up and everybody can see your private records, well, then again, I would say leave that back to the free market. If somebody's fine with having cryptocurrency and all their information public, and people can go in there and see every little detail about you, if they want to, harvest that information, if that's something you don't care about, well, that's your decision to make if that's a process you want to operate under. But if the marketplace is saying, hey, we don't want everybody to know every little detail about us, we want that to be our private information between doctor patient relationship, and that's something that we don't want people to know, then make sure it's encrypted in a way that's protecting people's information. And I don't know if that's helping to give thoughts and perspectives on that
I
question.
agree with you. Like Ronald Reagan said, right? The scariest words in the English language are "I'm from the government and I'm here to help." I'm 100% on board with what you're saying. But like moving forward, ETFs, exchange traded funds. Now we've kind of leaving that era as of this past January when Bitcoin ETFs through the SEC were actually approved and now they can trade in the stock market. Recently we had Ethereum, the second biggest cryptocurrency. Let's keep it that simple in the world. Now has an exchange traded fund that can be traded on the stock exchange as well. Now there's an application for one called Solana, and they're approving them all over the world. So what do you think of the integration of basically the DeFi, international finance sector, where people would just hold cryptocurrency in their wallets or private wallets, coming to the public sector where people can actually hold them on the stock market? You think that's a good thing for the future of cryptocurrency or a bad thing?
I'm leery of it personally. It's like an indirect investment. It's more like a speculation market. I think when people invest in cryptocurrency, they should have the actual hard cryptocurrency themselves and not just have it held somewhere else, and then they're investing indirectly in the speculation market. If that's what people want to do, I guess fine. Like that's, if that's the way you want to invest. But I personally would be leery of that, and I would rather people who are investing in cryptocurrency and that whole free market process be where you actually own that cryptocurrency and not just on the speculation market as it sits off to the side.
Okay, something we haven't really answered. I was going to ask you, but we have a saying. if you're pro crypto, you know what to do. Orange man at the federal level. So I would think that if you're pro libertarianism, free market in Michigan, which by the way, I love Michigan. My mom asked me, she was like, Mike, what is your favorite state that you've been to? I've been to 31 states that like surprised you. That like, forget about income tax and all that stuff. And I was like, Michigan is definitely up there. I would definitely move to Michigan. So you're gonna keep fighting for the people of Michigan. Like, what's your plug right now, quickly? Or you can take as long as you want. We have time.
Oh,
Like what are you saying when you're on the campaign trail? Yeah, for yourself, for your campaign and libertarianism, how you're gonna keep fighting for us.
yeah, I guess we need free markets, and the problem that we're seeing is unions used to be very on the Democrat side of the spectrum, and large corporations used to be very on the Republican side of the spectrum. And campaign contributions were going to the respective parties along those lines. And what we're seeing now in the last decade is that large corporations are starting to go woke. They're starting to get involved in, indoctrination type of mentalities, and and that they're starting to line up more with the Democrats. And Democrat politicians are starting to say, well, hey, if this large corporation wants to talk with us about regulations, which they had done decades before, the problem is regulations are oftentimes advocated by industries like, hey, we need our industry regulated because this is how people will be safe. They'll make those types of arguments, but what they're really doing is they're trying to make the environment more difficult for small businesses to have more paperwork, to have more hoops to jump through, and then it creates monopolies for the large corporations. So the more regulations we have, the more government oversight, the more guilty until proven innocent, the more wasting people's time with reporting requirements instead of just doing what they do in the private sector, the more it makes those large corporations easier to have a monopoly. And then when the tax rates are a certain level, they want a special tax break or hundreds of millions of dollars in handouts so that they have an unfair advantage over their competitors. And Democrats try to act like they're for the little guy, but that process is redistributing wealth from the hardworking middle class and the little guy to the corporate elite. And the Democrats in
Yep.
Michigan, Gretchen Whitmer, and these central planners, that's what it is. When you take money from certain corporate welfare is very dangerous. We need to get back to free markets and equal opportunity, less rules, regulations, taxes, fines, and fees, and a business friendly environment where everybody can thrive. And having a monetary policy that's sound is also at the heart of what's important for a society. And the Republican Party platform and the Republican ideology and the mindset of the voters on the right is what we need if we want to have a healthy, thriving middle class and an environment that will work for everybody. We're going towards socialism, we're going towards tyranny very rapidly, and we need to restore our constitutional republic immediately because we're losing it rapidly.
Definitely. And with that, hopefully I'll see you in Michigan soon as well. By the way, almost a happy 1 year anniversary. Where I think it was around this time, right? Happy 1 year anniversary. Should I say that? And congratulations on your new house purchase too.
Yes, thank you, Mike. Appreciate it.
Definitely. All right. With that, I'd like to say, Carra and everybody else, upward and onwards. Let's get it.